So I get a call at, 10:15, 10:30 at night. Tenant says, hey, my toilet's not flushing. So I go out there and I see this pipe coming up out of the ground, and it's got this little cap on it. I didn't unscrew the cap. I touched the cap. The cap shot off like a rocket. It goes over my head, like by my ear. I hear it go by, and I will tell you, that was the septic cleanout. That cap goes flying by my ear, and the things that were on that cap and the things that were in that pipe also go flying by my ear, but not all of it went past me. Most of it landed on my face, my chest, my clothes, and it was that moment that I knew I'm not going to be able to do this job very long at all. Welcome to the Selling North Georgia podcast, episode 1. I'm Michael Williams.
I'm Corey Shields.
And I'm Drew McAllister.
And obviously, this is our first episode, so bear with us as we figure this out on the fly. Corey, what do you got?
All right, Michael. So a lot of people see your face around town on signs. Got a lot of listings. You're a busy guy. So I'm wondering if we rewind, put you in elementary school, kindergarten, the teacher says, what do you want to be when you grow up? Was real estate on the table or what?
It was my first answer. No, I'm kidding. So I actually didn't think about real estate at all until I was second semester of my senior year in college, and I was looking for an easy A. I was trying to figure out how to graduate with the least amount of work. At that point in my college career, I had been in school for 5 years, full-time the whole 5 years, while working full-time the whole time. And so I was spent and just ready to move on. And so what was the easiest A? It looked like real estate was going to be the easy A for me.
Did you get the A?
No, it turned out I got a C.
Okay. It worked out though.
Hopefully I have recovered from that C. So you know what they call a guy that graduates from med school with a C average, right? Doctor. Right?
That's right.
There you go. But no, that's how I got started, really. And then I guess it was 6 months later, I bought my first house. It was actually my grandmother's house, and they were going to lose it in foreclosure. So it turned out that I was in position to buy it. Nobody else in my family could buy it. So I bought the house really as an investment, but also just because my grandparents practically raised me, and so it was just it felt like the right thing to do on multiple levels. But because I'd been studying real estate that summer and that fall, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, which was a monumental book for just about everybody that's in real estate. They have read that book, right? So it was a good starting place for me, and I saw that I had the opportunity to help. So I did, knowing that that would be an investment for me in the future. And I still own the house.
When did you buy that house?
December of 2000. So then from there, I bought my first true investment about 2 years later. It was a quadplex. Did some creative financing on it. I borrowed some money on the Ben Hill Road house, the first house that I bought. I got basically a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. So I used a little bit of money from that. I used the seller financing as a piece of it, and then I got the loan from the bank. And so that's where my investing career started.
Okay. And you got like a 10-year window or so between investing and then getting licensed to be an agent?
That's right. So fast forward about, 8 or 9 years, the financial crisis was all the rage, and everybody was really just trying to figure out how not to lose their home. And I got lucky, I guess, or maybe it's providential, whatever you want to call it. But I had a friend at a bank call me and ask me to buy the houses that they had. And so I bought a few of those houses. They were offering me, I can't remember, maybe 14 or 15 houses, and I couldn't buy them all. So it was that moment when I kind of saw that I've spent all the money I have no ability to buy any more houses, but they're so cheap and they're such a good deal. Like, there's got to be a way for me to maximize on this somehow. So at the same time, I was trying to sell off a couple of houses, and I just wasn't getting the response, or wasn't getting the service that I really wanted from my realtor. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, I think I can do this myself. And so in January of 2011, I got my license and started working at that point, selling houses to other people, other investors, really is where I started. The first probably 10 clients I had were all investors.
And so whenever you hired that first assistant, what did you find was the hardest part about actually trying to take those steps and grow the thing?
Oh, that's a great question. So, I guess the hardest part was the idea of I know what to do, but then taking what I know how to do and telling someone else and getting all that information out of my head. So,
and maybe getting them to care as much as you too, I would imagine.
The care probably matters too, but honestly, I would take 100% responsibility of me trying to tell you to do something and not giving you all the steps that are going through my head so fast, right? Like there may be 10 steps to filling out a purchase and sale agreement. And so in my head, I heard all 10 of those steps happen, but I might have only told you 6 of them. And so then I just expect you to know what I know. And so I often think, and this has been true many times, but I don't think I have anything special. I just do what comes naturally. And so I think that you also will do what comes naturally, and filling out all 10 blanks in the contract should feel natural to you. And it doesn't all the time. So I struggled with putting systems and models in place to say, this is the checklist, right? This is how we do it every single time. Point 1, point 2, point 3. Often in my communication and my coaching style, it was here's 1, 2, and 7. Like you can figure out the rest. So that was the struggle. So
a lot, technology-wise, has it changed from whenever you were first getting started till now? Like, did you following that closely as time was going on? Like, was there any particular piece of technology that you thought was critical in what you were doing?
So, yes, but that brings me to a funny story that I have to share. So, I was a real estate investor for a while, and then I also did mortgages for a while, and then I was a commercial lender for about 8 weeks. And so that's a really short stint. So, without naming any names, I will just say that I worked for a bank as a mortgage broker that was very much on the edge of technology. So they had all the latest gadgets and all the things. So it was really cool to work for them, and that's kind of how I got into the banking industry. And then I went to work for another bank as a commercial lender. And I remember the first time that I got a message from the president. It was a memo that was placed on my chair. That memo was typed by the assistant at the branch. She typed it from a dictation machine that the president used at the main bank, and then they faxed it to all the branches, and then it was placed on my chair. So that was the moment that I knew that I was in a different environment, right? And so,
what year was that?
That was good point. That was in the mid 2000s, let's say. So, it was quite a shock to see how some parts of the world still didn't use the software that they needed to use. Yeah. And so I've remembered that story many times since then, because I often do come across, literally in the last week, I had somebody ask me what my fax number was. And so we're in 2021 and they asked me what my fax number was. And I said, I don't have one, but you can take a picture with your phone and send it to me, and that'll be fine.
That'll do the job.
Yeah, that gets it done. So anyway, yes, I have paid attention to the software and the technology as it goes on. And honestly, we're probably 5 years late in doing what we're doing right now. Mm-hmm. Because I knew this technology needed to happen, and I knew that podcast was important. And yet here we are, 2021, episode 1, when I've been watching podcasts for a decade on YouTube, and somehow we are now getting to it. So
we're here, though.
Sometimes I'm early, sometimes I'm late, and I'm going to call this right on time.
You're usually late, though.
Usually a little late.
5 minutes.
Yeah, so that's the answer to the question. That sometimes software played a big role, and lately, we're at Keller Williams now, so we're using Command, and that software is going to be amazing. There are parts of it that are great now. There's parts of it that are coming. There are parts of it that have bugs, but overall, Command is a difference maker. There are lots of parts of Command that make our job so much easier.
Mm-hmm. Do you see, like, on the horizon, any big changes that you think will either aid or disrupt what we're doing as real estate agents in the realm of technology?
Oh my goodness. So, gosh, that's a loaded question.
Loading it up.
Yeah. So there are definitely disruptors in the technology space. I guess the biggest disruptor that we've dealt with in the last couple of years is the iBuyer. And while that is maybe outside of technology, it's certainly technology enhanced. So you can't understand what a house is worth on 123 Main Street in Dalton if you don't have technology telling you what that house is worth, right? So yeah, I completely believe that it will continue to be disrupted. It's kind of a popular word to use these days, but yeah, I think disruption is certainly coming. How and where, what does that leave for the agent? It's yet to be determined. I think there will always be a need for you to be able to call your buddy, Michael, that knows your house, knows the value of your house, and helps you through that process. Mm-hmm. I don't know that any of the big name companies that are buying houses without ever seeing them will be able to make that relationship happen. But I do think we have to protect those relationships, and that there will need to be a human piece somehow. I don't know if it'll be realtors like we have today.
Sure.
And that might be 20 years from now.
Yeah. What about technology? Move away from disruptors and think of it more in terms of like what we're using day to day to better service clients, things like that, to run this, to sail this ship, essentially.
So, yeah, I mean, I've got a buddy, John Leonard, passed away maybe a year and a half ago. A mentor to me, loved the guy. He was amazing. If you had asked him, he was in the business forever too, like probably as long as I've been alive. I think he got his license the summer I was born. So, so if you asked him in 1984, like, do you think there's ever going to be a chance that you could sell 50 homes in 1 year by yourself? He would have been like, I don't know how that's possible. I have to drive everywhere to sell these things, right? But then if you asked him in 2019 or 2018, he's literally driving down the road at 70 miles an hour, because he always drove that way. But then also on his phone, talking, texting, like he's fully embraced it, right? And so he was one of the top producing agents in our town, and so yeah, he embraced it, and all those tools, texting, phone, cameras that are in your pocket now, all those tools didn't exist in '84, and yet they did in 2004. But yet they were way more powerful in 2014 and 2017. So. So yeah, there's gonna be something else that makes this super easy. I mean, this year alone, we've done closings with Zoom and never actually met all the people. I never saw the buyer never saw me, the buyer never saw the attorney. We all saw each other on camera. So that does speed up the process and make it easier to serve the client. You know, we're talking about potentially being able to walk through a house with a VR camera, and then everybody can walk through the house. All they got to do is have a VR capability, right? So virtual reality, for those that don't know. But so yeah, it certainly could be a situation where at some point in the future, Drew, who's been quiet this time, decides to buy a house in Miami and never actually goes to Miami to see the house. He puts on his VR goggles, he walks through the house, he checks it out, like, yeah, I love it. They send him a DocuSign agreement, he signs it. First time he sees it is at closing when he goes down there, and yeah, they give him the keys. Yeah, I definitely think that could happen. Not just could happen. I mean, we're probably years, not decades away from that.
Yeah, no, I would agree for sure.
So, are you still investing today?
Yes, you know, that's actually a really good question, because a lot of people think because the market has gone up so much lately that people like me are just kind of on the sidelines waiting. And so the answer to your question is absolutely still investing today. I still find good deals from time to time. The definition of a good deal today, let's back up. In 2009, I mentioned the banker that called me and said, will you buy these houses? I bought 9 houses in 2010, 11, and 12 over the course of those 3 years for $17,000 each, right? Today, that's absurd. The definition of good deal looks a little different today, but if you can buy something that is under market, like underpriced for what the market is today, that price may be $100,000, but it's probably still a good deal if a very similar house costs $120 down the street, right? So, you know, I recently bought a package of homes that was $290, and there was plenty of equity left on the table, but the seller just needed to get rid of it and didn't want to list it. I always try to list it first. If I can't list it, I try to sell it to other investors I work with. And if neither of those things happen, then yeah, I will buy. And I did, and we made money, so it was good. I think the interest rate environment today makes it really smart to buy an investment today. If you can buy a quadplex for $320, Marvin Campo's team, shout out, just had one listed. And if you can buy a quadplex for $320, put 20% down and finance that over 30 years for 3% or less, that will cash flow. That will put money in your pocket, and that money's likely going to go up over time while your interest rate stays the same for 30 years. I mean, let's look back 30 years, right? 1991, interest rate was probably 7 or 8% back then. Well, today it's 3.5, maybe 4 if you really just don't have great credit and you need to have a bump in the interest rate. I mean, that's incredible.
Huge difference.
Homes were selling in 1991 at normal prices for $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. Today, those same homes, $250,000, $300,000. So when inflation helps and interest rate environments change. If you're at 3 in the history of interest rates, for as long as we've been tracking them, this is hitting historic lows all the time. Like over the last year and a half, we've heard nothing but the media say, oh, this is the lowest interest rate in the history of the United States. So lock that in for 30 years. Yes, you should buy an investment right now.
What's the biggest mistake you've made in real estate?
I will tell you the grossest mistake I've ever made, and it's probably the biggest. But one of the things that all real estate investors learn over time is that they probably don't need to do the job. They need to hire somebody to do the job that actually knows what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And so this was likely 2003, maybe 2004. It's one of the very first properties I bought. Might have been the actual first property. And so I get a call at, 10:15, 10:30 at night. Tenant says, hey, my toilet's not flushing. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, there's no plumber that's going to come out at 10:30 on a Saturday night. I don't have anything to do. Let me go check it out. Let me go see what we have going on here. So I drive my Jeep over there, and the top's off. It's cool outside. Like, it's a good feeling, right? I'm like, oh yeah, this is good. Like, I'm a real estate investor. Yes. So I go out there, and I see this pipe coming up out of the ground, and it's got this little cap on it. And so I think, let's see what's going on here. I didn't unscrew the cap. I touched the cap. The cap shot off like a rocket. It goes over my head, like by my ear. I hear it go by, and I will tell you that was the septic cleanout, right? And so all of the people in the quadplex have been flushing all day, and it's not going anywhere. And so that cap goes flying by my ear, and the things that were on that cap and the things that were in that pipe also go flying by my ear, but not all of it went past me. Most of it landed on my face, my chest, my clothes, and it was that moment that I knew I'm not going to be able to do this job very long at all. So ultimately, I learned that lesson the hard way, right? Like, sometimes you got to hire a professional. So that's probably the grossest story I have.
Good thing you were in a Jeep with a top off.
Yeah, so literally I went home in my underwear that night and was thankful that I did not get pulled over, because it would have been easy to prove, like, sorry, officer, just check the back. Like, you probably smelled it when you walked up. Yeah, that was terrible. I'll tell you another big mistake I made was not. I recognized that there was a really good chance that the market was going to come back in Dalton, but not going all in. You kind of referenced it earlier. Should have bought all of them. I felt like I went all in, but looking back now, I know that I didn't go all in. And honestly, there's some courage that it takes to go all in when the world thinks carpet may not come back, right? And frankly, carpet probably hasn't come back like it was before. We all do hard surface now, right? So, I should have had more faith in the powers that be at Shaw and Mohawk, and at the time Beaulieu, and Engineered Floors was just getting started. And so I should have had more faith in those guys, that they know what they're doing because they built this town. I should have said, you know what? They built this town. They probably can figure this thing out. I'm going to
take a little more risk.
Yeah. I'm going to hitch my wagon to those guys because they're smart, right? So that's the second biggest mistake, I guess. But I did learn from both of those, and I have capitalized. I have taken more risk along the way. But it's also an unfair advantage that we have as realtors. We should be investing. We literally see the market every day. We study the data. We know what a good deal is and what a great deal is. Mm-hmm. And so we have an unfair advantage that we should be able to take advantage of. We should be able to find that deal, know that it's a good deal, and the risk to us is less than the risk is to the general public. So we should do more. I'm always amazed at how many realtors don't invest or have very little investments. It's surprising to me. So shifting the podcast a little, Drew, tell me about your investing.
I bought my first duplex last year. Realized real fast that tenants weren't for me.
That's funny.
Should have, the property management company has come along after that. So had that been in place, probably would have been okay. Ended up flipping it, selling it.
Did you make money?
I did make money. And then this year we have purchased another flipper. Taking a little longer than we wanted to, but we're almost there, almost to the finish line. So should be listed next week.
So you brought up a really good point. You got another flipper. And so after that first one and now this one, what happens when you flip a property and you actually make a profit? Is there a check you got to write at the end of that thing? The tax man, maybe?
Oh, the tax man, yeah.
So at what point, whenever you were, buying up these houses and you start to establish a rental portfolio, when did you switch over from managing them on your own to property management?
Yeah, that's a great question. So along the way, kind of the same thing that happened with me being a realtor turned out to lead me to being a part owner in a property management company. So I talked to a few property management companies around town, and good folks. I like them. I enjoy hanging out with them, talking to them, eat lunch with them, whatever. But they just didn't seem to have the same philosophy that I had as far as what an acceptable level of vacancy would be, or what an acceptable limit for repairs would be, right? So when I do my math and I'm trying to figure out, is this a good investment or not, typically over 20 years now, I've kind of figured out it's going to cost me about 15% every year for repairs. When I say 15%, I mean of the revenue it generates, right? So if I generated $10,000, I'm probably going to spend $1,500 that year just doing normal repairs, right? So I found that those repair costs were higher when I used outside property management. So I just never felt comfortable going that route because my expenses always went up and my revenue always went down. And so a level of vacancy for me after managing my own for years was 4.7, 4.8. I typically stayed in there when I was staying on top of it. Every now and then there would be this random situation where I didn't fill the house right away. I might decide to sell it, put it on the market for a couple months, didn't sell it. So I don't count that part of the vacancy, but me actively trying to get a tenant in versus when the tenant actually shows up, I had about 4.7, 4.8% vacancy rate. And so
Can you specify for anyone who might not know what you mean by that?
Yes. So vacancy rate to me, good job. So you have 52 weeks in a year, right? So if you have 2 weeks out of those 52, that's going to give you about that 4.5% vacancy rate. So you didn't collect rent for those 2 weeks. So obviously when you have somebody move out and somebody else moves in, that might be a month, but when you spread that out over 20 or 30 properties, you can get to those kind of percentages where it changes 4.6 or whatever. But so for me, if they didn't pay rent, that counts. So real vacancy,
right?
Real me not getting money in my pocket. That's what I define it as. And so when I talked to these other guys and I experienced a little bit with these other property managers, a 10% vacancy rate is what they were projecting, and it just didn't feel good. That's less revenue, that's more cost. And so I just kept managing it myself. And then at some point you start to realize as the agency grows and I bring people on like you guys, and I'm trying to figure out how to manage all these things. And then I've got my little girl, Iris, she's 8. I've got her that I want to spend more time with. It just gets to be too much. And then I've got people, we've got a team of 11 here that works with us, and we've got operations staff, but then even then they're busy too. Like we sold 152 houses last year. So like they don't have time to deal with the property management stuff. And so about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I really started trying to start a property management company. But then again, I don't have time to actually start the thing. So timing was fortuitous. It worked out. Again, the good Lord looking out for me. Brought people into my life that had a little bit of that experience. And so I was kind of like the guinea pig. I'm like, look, I'll help you start it, but here are the parameters that I want to see. I want to see low vacancy. I want to see low cost of repairs. And so far we've been able to do that. Last year we started July 1st with Connection Rentals, and at the end of the year I had 9.9% in my management fee cost. So I hit the metric I wanted, which was 10% of the cost for someone else to manage it. I hit the vacancy rate. It was like 4.8 if you count the actual vacancies. Some of those were my fault because I didn't get the houses fixed up in time, and so some of that's on me. But real vacancy, what I call it, was like 4.8. And then the repairs were a little more because there were a couple of houses in our portfolio that haven't been touched in a decade. So again, had a long-term tenant move out, so that one cost more. So that was more of a capital expenditure. So I separate capital expenditure versus just ongoing maintenance. If I need to paint the thing, that's what I would consider ongoing maintenance. Capital expenditures, I need to put a new roof on it, right?
Sure.
So it hit all the metrics. And so Connection Rentals has been a fantastic success for us, that I'm able to get that off my plate so that I can now focus on doing more productive things.
All right. And so I think we have pretty well gone through the years starting in the early 2000s. Now we're kind of up to 2021. Now selling North Georgia is bigger than ever for you. So what does that look like, and where do you see the team going?
Oh, that's a great question. So where I see the team going, at this point, I don't take clients on personally. Very rarely will I get involved in a listing or working with a buyer. I certainly still help. I certainly still am involved in the transaction, but I'm not the go-to agent, right? So people on my team take care of that. You, Drew, you guys are doing a phenomenal job with taking care of clients. Yeah, good job. So comfortable with all of you guys, Boomer, Julian, Mike Morgan, y'all are doing a great job. So it's helped me be able to turn that part over to you. So where I see Selling North Georgia go at this point is I run it now more like a CEO. And so I depend on you guys to operate and do the actual realtor work. And so I kind of manage the team. So right now we are focused in 4 counties. We serve Catoosa, Whitfield, Murray, and Gordon, and we serve those really well. And so my next goal is to branch over to Gilmer County, Fannin County, and develop that part of North Georgia. Hopefully going to get an agent in Floyd County, maybe one that focuses on Walker. We do a little bit of work in Walker now, not a ton. So it would make sense to me that we had somebody down that 27 corridor, Highway 27.
Yeah.
So I'd like to grow it out there, and at the same time help you guys grow. Help you get an assistant, that we've been talking about for a while. Maybe have a showing assistant. Mike Morgan's new to our team, so bringing him along and helping him become a showing agent, that would help you guys maximize your time.
Sure.
So there's a couple ways to grow Selling North Georgia. And then I'm also looking at other investments. I've got a couple other businesses that I've started. We just bought a storage facility, so that's a new and exciting venture for us. I've owned a ton of rentals and some commercial, but I've never done self-storage, so that's going to be interesting. Still figuring that part out.
All right, Michael, let's wrap it up with this one. Why should somebody pick or choose Selling North Georgia over someone else?
All right, good question to wrap it up with. I would say number one is experience. So yes, we have agents on the team. How long have you been licensed? 10 years, right?
10 years.
Corey, when did you get your license?
It's been about 5 now.
Yeah, so just in the 2 of you, that's 15 years. I'm also helping, and I'm also running the team. So that's 20 years that we've been talking about my experience, right? So that's 35 years just standing here. We got other agents involved too. So the experience level that you get with us is certainly key. Like I said before, we've got 11 people that work here. And so, when you go to buy a house 10 years ago and you look around the landscape and you say, okay, who am I going to get to sell my house? Well, that person is going to meet with you, list the house. That person is going to do all the paperwork. That person is going to do all the marketing. That person is going to do all the negotiating. That person is going to come to closing. That person is going to put the sign in the yard, right? If they were doing any marketing at all, they're going to do the marketing. So when you put all of those jobs on one person, it's really difficult for one person to be good at every part of that, right? Now, there may have some strengths and may be not so strong in other areas. Well, the way we've got the Selling North Georgia team set up is we have agents that do the agent work, which is negotiating, which is kind of overseeing the marketing. We have Angie, who's the operations manager, who runs the whole show. So she makes sure you two are doing your jobs, right? So
every day.
Angie's the operations manager. She's the glue, right? We have Alyssa, who does all the transactions, right? So she's the transaction coordinator. She makes sure that the appraiser shows up on time, the inspector shows up on time. She makes sure that we get all of our paperwork done correctly. Then we have Kaylee, who's answering the phone. We literally have the phone ringing so much that that's one person's job. She is the receptionist. Now, she does some other things too. And so it's certainly valuable to have somebody that always answers the phone, right? That's an important part. One of the biggest complaints we get is like, I can't get an agent to answer the phone, right? So now we have somebody literally answering the phone. So when you call the Selling North Georgia team, somebody answers. If it's after hours, you may get rerouted to one of us, but then we answer, right? So that's a key ingredient. Then you have Morgan, who does all the marketing. So literally her only job is to market your property, right? So if you're a buyer, Morgan's only job is to make sure that you are getting matched up with homes that fit and like announcing to the world, hey, we have a buyer, right? So Morgan's doing the marketing. We got all those pieces put together so that my one job, if you're listing your house with me, my one job is to sell your house. If you're a buyer for me, my only job is to make sure that you are represented well as a buyer in this market. If you want professional marketing, if you want professional agents, if you want someone who can sell your home for the most in the least amount of time, it's going to be hard to compete.
And I think too, to put the focus back on the consumer, and if I put myself in the the buyer's shoes, I think a big deal to me would be that division of labor and eliminating, or maybe not totally eliminating, but really reducing the chances of something falling through the cracks. You know, when it's this big transaction, maybe the biggest one you'll ever do. Just having so many people, so many sets of eyeballs on the same, you know, situation. I think that there's a ton of value there for sure.
Yeah, that's right. Especially when you have 5 people on the team that are also finding homes for sale. Like if you're representing a buyer, there's 5 people on our team, and we've got 40 active listings right now. Like there's a good chance your buyer hears about it before everybody else's buyer, right? So there's also that synergy that happens too. So lots of reasons why. But yeah, what's best for the consumer is how we built this business. Like the reason I was successful, you mentioned it earlier, like what made me successful. I literally focused. I understand what the term agent means, right? My job as an agent is to represent your best interest. So that's how we built the business, and that is part of our vision. Right? We want to be the most trusted real estate name in Georgia. Right? So if that's the case, how do we become the most trusted? We always do what's best for you, not what's best for us.
Sure.
Can't tell you the number of times I've told somebody, don't sell your house. Can't tell you the number of times I said, hey, you should rent instead of buy, because you're not ready, right? That, along with that comes trust.
Yeah.
You know I'm actually doing what's best for you.
Right.
So,
Well, Michael, I feel like we know a little bit more about you now. I certainly do, and I've known you for a long time. So, yeah, it's been good. I appreciate it.
Well,
I'm thanking you for being on my own podcast.
Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Glad you were the first guest.
All right, this is Selling North Georgia Team signing off.